Welcome, baseball family. We're really excited to get into this Phillies Mount Rushmore conversation. We really like doing these. We want you to weigh in, by the way. We usually tell you that at the end, but at this point, you need to be aware that if we get this wrong, we expect to hear about it in the comments on YouTube. Okay?
And also in the mailbag, link in the description.
And that's right. Mailbag and link in the description. You're good at this, Brad. Okay. Baseball family. The Philadelphia Phillies have been around since forever. They literally started as a franchise in 1883. So trying to put their Mount Rushmore together is not as easy as you might think. All right. So go with us on that. They still play baseball in Philadelphia under the same name. That's 141 seasons total for those of you that do actuaries at home. The 141 total seasons playing Major League Baseball. They have a winning record. That's not true. They're sitting below 500, actually. They've won a million games and they lost 1,000,001 games. Let's go with that. They're sitting at a 473 win percentage. They have had, in 141 years, 15 playoff appearances. They have won 8 pennants and 2, count them, 2 world championships.
That first one was in 1980.
They have also gone under the name the Philadelphia Quakers and the Philadelphia Phillies. Brad, tell us where the name comes from.
Well, so I actually want to. So sometimes I feel kind of silly being a Mariners fan, just because it's just every year, just mired in losing. 20-year playoff drought, right? And didn't make the playoffs till 95, and only a couple times. I kind of all of a sudden feel, after learning all this stuff about the Phillies today, I feel a little bit more like a kindred spirit with Phillies fans.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why Jason and I get along so well. There's just a spiritual connection there. Something like that. Anyway.
That's awesome.
I don't mean that maliciously or anything. It's just I get it.
Yeah.
Right?
You do, yeah. Me, I don't get it.
Anyway, this is where the Phillies name comes from. Brig mentioned they were originally known as the Philadelphia Quakers. This is very early years. They eventually changed the name to the Philadelphians, which somebody being a Philadelphian was commonly shortened to being Phillies, or the Philadelphians are shortened to the Phillies. But here's an interesting one for you, Brig. In the early 1940s, they wanted to change the moniker to the Blue Jays. They wore a Blue Jay patch on their uniforms for a few seasons, but everybody just kept calling them the Phillies. And then eventually it was all right, forget it. We're the Phillies. So,
wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, I had no idea. I didn't know that. That is all according to teamnameorigin.com. Yeah, I didn't know that there was a potential for them to have changed their name to the Blue Jays. And maybe that's part of where the Blue Jays name comes from for Toronto.
Could be.
I don't know. I do not know.
We'll let you know when we get there. We haven't already. Anyway. All right. So, baseball family, we're going to put together the top 4 names that you cannot have a conversation about the Phillies as an entire franchise without mentioning. This is according to Brad and I. We do our research independently. We do not share stats or opinions as we move forward, and we do not ask each other for any advice on any of this. We just go at it totally independently. So sometimes we fight, and that's kind of fun. But usually we overlap, and we always overlap.
And also that ends up getting a little bit physical as well if you go back and watch the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's my fault. For those of you wondering, I'm the physically aggressive one. Yes. And I'm still sorry, and I'm also not sorry. It was,
and
wonderful.
Also it's still hilarious.
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah, for those of you wondering, that is on the Dodgers Mount Rushmore video, and it is worth a watch. Okay, so Brad, why don't you go first and tell us who you think, and this is in no particular order, by the way.
Right.
We're not ranking them. We're just including the 4 we think you have to include. So, Brad, why don't you go first?
Okay, this first guy, get into my John Gruden voice. This guy. He is a Hall of Famer, obvi. 3-time MVP. Yeah. I feel like that's a lot in baseball, getting 3 MVPs.
Yeah.
12-time All-Star, 10-time Gold Glover, 6-time Silver Slugger. He was on the 1980 World Series team, and he was the MVP of that World Series. Do you know who this is yet, Brig?
Of course.
Of course you do. This is one Mike Schmidt. Career WAR 106.8, 548 career home runs, 268 batting average, career batting average, which is interesting because that was like really low back then. But at the same time, though, you look at I gotta get to his OPS because he had 2 seasons where he was over 1,000 for his OPS, led the league in OPS
total
5 times with a career OPS of 908. That's pretty dang good.
It's pretty
dang good. Who you are. Yeah, it's pretty good.
That's pretty good.
He's one of those guys where, like, I remember, so I grew up, the Phillies to me were like the 93 Phillies, right? Like the early 90s Phillies with like Kruk, Dalton,
exactly.
Dykstra, Mitch Williams. I'll never forget Mitch Williams, Schilling, those guys. But then when I learned about the 80s, like the 1980 Phillies who won the World Series and learned about Mike Schmidt, I was like, oh, that dude was legit. Like I often discount guys before the 90s saying that I don't think they could play in today's game, but I feel like Schmidt could.
Oh, yeah. I totally agree.
He could hang and he would do really well in today's game. But being part of the first Phillies World Series team, being the best player on that team and being the best player for several years on that team and having his place in Phillies history, I think he's a super duh nominee for the Mount Rushmore for the Phillies.
Yeah. He's the first one on my list as well. Super duh. For all the reasons you said. And one of my very favorite things to look into is how long did they play with the club? And he spent his entire 18 years as a Philly. And there were some lean years, right? So,
right. A lot of them.
I think that a lot of them were lean, and he was the kind of the consistent one, right? One of the most consistent guys on the club the entire time. So for that reason, he's my super duh. Gotta include him no matter what.
Well, and I think one more thing that you need to give him credit for is that he played in 100 games in every season except for his first and his last.
Whoa,
to never have played less than 100 games is a really big deal. And I know it's different in the 70s and 80s than it is now because guys get Sunday off or whatever, you know.
Yeah, right. It's different.
But even then, though, like to play 108 games 12 years into his career, because, you know, obviously there was an injury somewhere in there that sidelined him. And I think that's a big deal for a guy to be healthy that long and still go out there and play every single day, especially given the training and care that they had back then. Like we've seen videos of John Kruk talking about going to the training room, like, yeah, we just drink beers, smoke heaters.
Yeah. Yeah. Fire down a Twinkie.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly right. Shotgun and Twinkies before my 4th at bat in the game.
Exactly.
But
yeah.
Anyway. Yeah. So.
Yeah. Right. It wasn't elite care like it is now.
No,
for sure.
Definitely not.
No.
Okay. Go ahead, Brig, with your next guy.
All right. I'm going to move on to this guy's a pitcher. He's a pitcher. He's also in the Cooperstown Hall of Fame. He won the Cy Young Award 4 times. He also won the Triple Crown as a pitcher. He's a 10-time All-Star, 2 times World Series appearance, Gold Glove, and he also had an ERA title. He spent 15 years as a Philly, though he did bounce around a little bit, but he spent 15 years as a Philly, and his career WAR 90.2, career ERA 3.22. And that was across 741 games. He started 709 of them. This is Steve Carlton.
So he is not on mine. He came really close, but he is not because I feel like I could only include one pitcher on mine. He was not my guy.
Interesting.
Solid pick, though. I feel like he absolutely belongs. So I couldn't put him over anyway. Go ahead, Brig. Sorry.
No. That's okay. That's
he would be my. I think he would be my runner-up.
Okay, that means that your runner-up's probably going to be, or my runner-up's probably going to be on your list.
I don't know. Maybe we'll get there.
That usually happens. All right, I dropped my pen. You go while I pick this up.
Okay, so my next guy, I was good. I'm gonna save him for later. I'm gonna go with this next guy instead. This guy's a 6-time All-Star. He was on the 2008 World Series team. He has a career WAR of 64.5. 4-time Silver Slugger. I don't hear Phillies fans, and by that I mean the two that I know, Jason and Tori,
Excellent.
talk about that 2008 World Series team. I never hear them talk about that team without mentioning this guy, or even really the Phillies without mentioning Chase Utley.
Yeah, right.
Right. And so he spent 13 years in Philly, absolutely his prime in Philly, right?
Yeah.
He spent his last few years in LA, his 4 years as a Dodger, but he's a Philly. He is absolutely 100% a Philadelphia Philly.
Yeah.
Not a Hall of Famer, but I feel like part of that is because his impact on the team was not, I don't know, like you felt it more as a Phillies fan probably, and I think that the team felt it more than what the national audience would have felt, right? I think is a big part of it. But I mean, he had solid career in 2006. He led the league in runs scored with 131. He finished his career with a 275 batting average. Like I said, with Schmidt was like a little bit low for when he played, but he was starting to get into the beginning. Like I think toward the end of his career, starting to get into the beginning of the launch era or the launch angle era, where batting averages are dropping. But he finished with an 823 OPS, which I think is respectable.
It is.
So, but overall, like I said, I think that his impact was felt mostly within the organization, and that's what carried that team to the 2008 World Series. And to me, that is enormous.
Yeah. So, as predicted, he's my runner-up. For all the reasons you said, all the ho-humming you did about his statistics is the reason I could not justify including him.
No, I get that too.
It's hard to quantify X factor, even though I do also place a great deal of importance on X factor and clubhouse presence and that
it's
kind of
recognizable,
stuff.
even when it's unrecognizable. So I understand that.
It is. Yeah. So I don't know that, but yeah, solid pick. I totally agree. And it was really hard not to include him because I hear his name constantly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we've both done two now. Let's go ahead. Let's take a quick break. When we get back, we have two left each to go through. Welcome back, baseball family. We are here. We're going to wrap up our Phillies Mount Rushmore. We each have two selections left. I led off last segment. So, Brig, take it away with your next nominee.
All right. I'm going to do the thing I always do, and I'll explain it in a minute. But first, let me tell you about this ball player, okay? In the Hall of Fame at Cooperstown, 3 Triple Crown, 5-time ERA title. Yeah, I have another pitcher, Brad, and he's really good.
Okay.
Career WAR 119.3. Career ERA 2.56.
That's outstanding.
Yeah. 696 games, 600 starts, 32 saves. Figure that out. Spent 20 years playing Major League Baseball, and only 8 of them in Philadelphia. But his impact in Philadelphia was astronomical, including MVP voting, etc.
Is it Roy Halladay?
It's not.
Okay. Go ahead. Who is it?
It's not. I couldn't justify Roy Halladay.
I know. I wanted to, but I couldn't.
I wanted to, but I couldn't either. This guy's name officially is Grover, though he goes often by Pete. It's Pete Alexander.
Ah, okay.
He started playing in Philadelphia in 1911 when he was 24.
Nice.
This is what I do, though. I'm a purist. I got to go all the way back and find the guy who maybe helped craft the franchise a little bit. And this guy feels like one of those puzzle pieces that started it all. And with those statistics, you can't tell me that a deep dive analysis of the Phillies team is going to be able to exclude him. Sorry.
You're probably right.
You can't
You're
do
probably
it.
right. Yeah.
Even though I know, and I get a lot of crap about this when I do it, that nobody knows these players' names. Nobody.
Tungsten Armor Houlihan.
Yeah, exactly. I told the Braves when we did the Braves one, I put Warren Spahn on my list, and I got so many comments. I live in Braves country about nobody knowing who that is, and I'm like, well, that's your problem, because let me just
learn
go
about
ahead
your
and tell
team.
Yeah, did 7 minutes of research. No. Anyway, go look up Pete Alexander, Grover Pete Alexander, because he is a terrific ball player, and I know there's dead ball arguments versus live ball. I got it, but I just can't argue with the pitching. You just can't.
I dig it. I like it. That's a good one. That's solid.
Thank you.
So do you mind if I move on to the next one? Is that okay?
I wish you would, actually. I'm very excited.
All right. Very excited. Okay, next guy is actually a pitcher, 4-time All-Star, NLCS MVP, World Series MVP of the 2008 World Series. I know, I'm not going back very far, but I feel like a franchise that has so few World Series, I think that they're going to recognize the guys who had significant roles on those teams more than anybody. And so that was one of the reasons I went with this guy. And I remember that 2008 team being like, that dude is the reason. Without him, it's not happening, which is why he was the NLCS MVP, World Series MVP, none other than Colbert Michael Hamels.
Yes.
I've never been a Phillies fan. I've never been anybody who's cheered for the Phillies, but I always cheered for Cole Hamels when he was a Philly because I loved watching him pitch.
Totally amazing.
Loved it.
I agree.
Wasn't the same in Texas. Wasn't the same after that, right? But man, as a Philly, the dude was dominant. And then you had Halladay and Cliff Lee with him later. I called those guys the Holy Trinity. I was like, man, there's no stopping that team. And sure enough, there was. But they felt unstoppable with the three of them. And Cole Hamels anchoring that trio. It was amazing. It was unreal. Yeah. So for me, mostly it comes down to remembering the role that Cole Hamels played on that World Series team and that team, and like as with the pitching staff for those several years, because he was a Philly for 10 years, but his peak was 08 to like 2012, right?
Yeah.
07 right. 2012, because he was a all-star in 07. 08 was the World Series year, and then 2012 he was an all-star, and then he wasn't an all-star again until 2016. But no, I felt like with like I said, the way he led that pitching staff and led that team to the World Series, you've got to put him on there. So
I agree. I love that. No, I don't blame you at all. All right, my last pick. You ready?
Yeah. I have a feeling it's going to be the same guy.
You think so?
Just a hunch.
You want to play rock, paper, scissors?
No, you go ahead. You go ahead. I don't know that it will, but I have a hunch.
Okay. My guy was an MVP, 3-time All-Star, also part of the 2008 World Series crew, because I need to give a nod there, right? So here we go.
Right. Yeah.
Silver Slugger Award, NLCS MVP, Major League Player of the Year, Home Run Derby champion, and Rookie of the Year. He's a first baseman. It's Ryan Howard.
Ryan Howard? Mm-hmm. It's not right?
Yeah, I didn't think so.
No.
That's who I'm going with, Ryan Howard. I think he injected the right amount of juice into that clubhouse at just the right time that helps set up the 2008 World Series. Comes in, wins Rookie of the Year. He makes it to the All-Star team in 2006 and starts to build up, lays the groundwork for the 2008 World Series.
His highs were really, really, really high, like really high. Yeah, astronomically high. But man,
his lows
were
they were abysmal.
Death Valley low.
Yeah, but because of his ability to support the team during the 2008 run and the years leading up to that, I got to give it to Ryan Howard. I just have to.
Okay.
And I can't
Right.
pick another pitcher. I can't let myself. That's the problem.
Can't. Yeah, I get that. Okay, so I have to pick another 2008 World Series guy.
Okay.
But it's not who you think.
Mm.
He is the winningest manager in the history of the Phillies organization.
I had the same thought. Yeah.
Charlie Manuel. And this is the thing that's really interesting is that, like, I know Danny Ozarks has the highest winning percentage among managers, but he only managed the team for I think it was 7.5 years. Charlie Manuel was there for 8.5 years. And man, there was way more good than bad during those years. When it got bad there at the end. I understand. I get it. He was
Sure.
That's the life of a manager. You're hired to get fired. I get it. That's how it works. But man,
That's right.
The Charlie Manuel years were formidable because, like, think about this. You've got in 08, you've got the World Series champs. In 09, you've got an NL pennant, but then you've also got dang it, where'd it go? It won't let me get to it. But anyway, you've got solid playoff runs in there as well. You've got lost the NLDS in 07, which granted was the first round back then. But then you had another appearance in the NLCS in 2010, and then a battle in the NLDS in 2011. That's 5 years in a row where you're making the playoffs. That doesn't happen
Of the
with
8,
every team.
Yeah. No, it's true.
It doesn't happen. It's tough to get into the playoffs, especially then where there was only 8 teams out of 30 getting in. It's a big deal. And I think that Charlie Manuel deserves it because of the success that he brought to that team, and bringing them their second World Series is a really big deal. Just having been around for that long and only having 2 World Series titles means a whole lot.
Yep.
So that's why I
agree.
put Charlie Manuel on there. So.
I had the same thought. I grappled with that same thing.
Did you?
And honestly, there's so much give and take on these, right? For 141 years of baseball history, any of these names could get taken off. Any of them could get added. I think Schmidt is the only one that is an absolute must-have, no-brainer.
Right. Yes, I agree.
Other than that.
So we do this again in 10 years. Who on this current team? Is there anybody on this current team that you would put on there?
Yes, that's what I was hoping we were gonna get there. Let me just. Do you have one?
Not yet. Give me a couple more years, and I might have somebody.
Why can't you do it now?
I want to see another like postseason Bryce Harper before I put him on there.
Oh, it's not Bryce Harper for me.
Then that's it. Who would it be for you?
It would be Real Muto.
That's solid. Yeah,
it would be JT Real Muto. And I do need more time. You're absolutely right. Like, I need another 5 to...
Because at this point, he spent more time in Miami than he has in Philly still, right?
Exactly. Well, it's 5-5 as of, if you count this season, it's 5-5.
Okay.
But I just think you cannot have the current Phillies without JT Real Muto. You just can't.
I think you're right. Yeah. Yeah, I think he is the better option. Yeah, like they say, like Bryce Harper says all the time, or at least he has for a few years, said that they call him QB1, and there's a reason for that.
Exactly.
Which I think is a really big compliment.
Yeah, from a guy who's brother Harper. Yeah, when he compliments you, you probably earned it 3 times over.
Yeah, I agree.
Anyway, I would put JT. He has career WAR is 31.8 right now. Okay, it's just gonna get better. He's just going to get better. The end. Anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're right. That's a solid pick. Yeah, I think that is the guy who would go on. I think you're right. I always forget about him for some reason, which is weird because I love him to death, and I'm not as a catcher. You'd think that he'd be like my guy, but
yeah, you think so.
Anyway.